All right, good evening, everyone. We will call the March 11th City of Murfreesboro Planning Commission meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Ms. Jaco, do we have anybody signed up for public comments prior to the public hearings? All right. The next item on our agenda is approving the minutes of the February 18th, 2026 Planning Commission regular meeting. Do we have any changes to those minutes or a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Vice Chair Ava Water.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Chair Halliburton.
Aye. First item of business is under old business. It's a zoning application for approximately 87.7 acres located along Manchester Pike to be zoned PUD, Manchester Pike Development PUD, simultaneous with annexation. Scannell Properties is the applicant. Ms. Smith.
Well, good evening, Planning Commission. This item, you may recall, you looked at originally at a public hearing during our February evening meeting. And during that meeting, this is the property shown on the aerial, the 4 properties that are wedged between Manchester Pike Highway and then the end of Distribution Drive, with currently several wetlands on the property and then some tree areas. Sounded like, and in the letter that they've provided, they've highlighted those items that were changed, and I believe they reached out to some or many of the Planning Commission for some feedback on what kind of changes. So I'm just going to go into really the high-level items that are listed there 1 through 5. The biggest one is the site layout. So previously, when you're looking at this site, those 2 buildings on the far left side, top left corner, were oriented literally a 90-degree turn, where the loading dock areas were a north-south. So they rotated those particular buildings to provide a little bit better transition between the adjacent apartments that the first tenants are moving in less than 90 days next door for that particular project. So that was modified. The other thing that they did is this building was, I think, the biggest concern that was previously had their loading docks and trailer parking oriented towards Manchester Pike. They've reoriented that, flipped the building all the way around. And then the other thing is to provide some more permanence. In some areas, they've provided a preservation area, no disturbance allowed at all along the frontage. And they will be going over an exhibit and a little bit of how that affects and what the distances are from the adjacent tenant uses. The other thing that they did by reorienting the buildings to the side is there used to be a drive approach that went through this wetland to attach to the Elam Farms Parkway. That was removed in order that they could preserve the wetlands and really keep that as an open area for the project. When we're looking at, see if I can click. This is when it's like, is it touch screen? Is it? There we go. So here you can see that orientation of the wetlands, and what they looked at was really in this section where they're wanting to preserve those wetlands, moving that buffer area and increasing the buffer area in this location so that the view shed coming down here from the adjacent residential uses would be somewhat blocked. The other thing that they did was they changed the use table. So the use table, you may recall buildings, the 2 smaller buildings, they had a lighter intensity use, and the bigger buildings, buildings 3 and 4, had heavier intensity uses. They basically took out all the heavier intensity uses for the entire project. Simplified it, said let's do lighter uses on all of them. So when you look at those use tables that they've included in our program book, you'll notice there's just 1 column all the way through for really commercial uses. So all of these uses were previously listed. The difference was there were a couple of uses that in the original lighter use section were either not included or they were limited based on the Roman numerals that are attached to them. And these are the ones that staff wanted to just highlight, not necessarily that we may be in conflict, but after we talked to them, they were in agreement that the recycling center could and should come out of all of the area within those areas. We did specify and clarify limited outdoor storage versus outdoor storage because there was some confusion with our zoning ordinance and the language being used. We wanted to be very clear. Temporary storage, which is like less than 30 days on truck aprons, would be allowed if somebody's doing something that's short-term, but if it's permanent, it would fall just like everything else in city does, which is you have to have a site plan approved by the Planning Commission to get outdoor storage approved, because we generally have screening requirements, or they're hidden behind other areas so that you don't get areas of, let's say, open pipes, wrecked cars, that nowadays could be done right off the get-go. The other area of concern that staff did have and previously was shared at our last meeting is the data center server farm that's greater than 15,000 square feet. Our current zoning ordinance allows ones that are less than 15,000 square feet and they take up less than half of the building. We actually have a couple of small ones. Redstone has one off of Memorial, but currently our zoning code says anything greater than 15,000 has to do a special use permit. But there are no special use standards, so that means just those 5 standards that you always look at. Hey, is this a negative impact? In talking to our legal, planned developments cannot have another body, BZA, overturning a zoning for a property. So it would kind of be like BZA having, let's say this is all light industrial, and we're going to overturn your light industrial zoning. That's the same weight a special use permit would have on a planned development, and our zoning code does not allow for those. So that's the biggest reason that staff didn't want it in place, because one, there aren't any standards listed, and currently it would be another body that would have to approve it. And we don't know that there's anything out there that shows clearly that the potentials could be mitigated, but they may speak about that separately. And then last but not least, contractor storage exterior. Not that staff is against it. Here there is this footnote: if they are doing sales, rental, or repair, what would apply is this additional standards that just says specific users have to meet the parking requirements in the zoning ordinance. And let's see, 1B, sorry, that permanent outdoor storage areas would be subject to that same site plan review approval. So here it would allow for that. Just previously it was not shown as an allowed use in the lighter districts. And then that exterior contractor storage, likely if that's something that you would want to allow, we would want to add that same footnote 1V to that one if that's something that is supported by the council and commission, sorry. I'm used to nighttime meetings always being city council. And then here you'll notice that they've just added one additional exception, or actually 2. One was this type E buffer, I think was there before, the future interior parcels not have landscape, and then really allowing these dock doors to face Elam Farms Parkway right of way, which we think might be a design guideline requirement, but those have been written into the plan development. Other than that, there haven't been any changes in architecture, but the applicant believed that some of the orientation issues that kind of affect the entirety of the site may meet some of the concerns that were expressed previously to have a transition zone appropriate for those. And then last but not least, they've provided this particular depiction, which I believe might be separately listed for each building in the program book. But this shows anticipated growth with landscaping versus the setbacks of the building. The first building, of course, being the closest. It's the one that's right at the very top of the project site, near where Elam Farms Parkway would exit the site. So they have some setbacks there, and you can see as they grow over time, it's thicker and thicker. And as you go to those other views, and these actually go down Manchester Pike. So the first view is the furthest to the north, the next one is further south, the next one further south, and the next one further south. So when you're looking at those distances, this is where I wish everything was touchscreen. So here you can see some of those locations. So they did one right about where my hand is, so the distance is here that you're looking at in that viewpoint. The next one, I believe, is here's the corner of the building. So that what they were trying to do is, as you're going down that highway, what views are you seeing and how far of a distance? I would say in all of these cases, probably the closest distance, and we may have to verify it, is at least, you can see this is 200 feet. So this being the shortest distance, this looks like it's about 350 feet back, and then you get further and further away from the project site. So with that, I will turn it on over to 420 feet, but I was just going to ask the applicant to come on up and maybe go over some of the specifics on the project site. And you can see in the staff report kind of the summary of those items that have been updated for your consideration. And I believe last time we did close the public hearing on this item, and I don't believe we've had any request for any other persons.
No, this has not been advertised as a public hearing. The public hearing was open and closed, and so this is just under old business for you to consider a recommendation to council. And I did just also want to note that, just a housekeeping measure, we noticed that there were commercial and industrial uses, which means that it should have been classified as a PUD instead of a PID. And so we changed the heading in the request, and they changed their pattern book to a PUD. Because anytime we have a mix of different kinds of uses, that's the PUD is the type of zoning that we would use.
Thank you, Matthew.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom McCary. I'm a Development Director with Scannell Properties. Holly did a great job running through the changes. We made those 2 building rotations to make them more appealing to the properties into Manchester Pike. For the Pike, they'd be looking at our nice commercial frontage, the glass, the nice facades, the main entries, just an one row of auto parking. So nothing untoward to look at from the Pike. And then the buildings in the northwest corridor rotated to make the same thing towards the multifamily development to the north, and to have the buildings acting as a screen itself from the truck court. We shifted that buffer also, again, for the benefit of the development to the north from better screening. We put in that transitional area for no disturbance, no development, to create a transition between our development and Manchester Pike. For the zoning uses, like Holly said, we downgraded things a bit. I think we're totally fine removing the recycling center. I think the data center is really the only thing that we probably need to discuss in a little more detail. And our proposal was just making it clear that it has to be a low water consumption style of data center, and utility capacity has to be sufficiently available to support it. And if not, it can't go in. And then adding those POVs from the surrounding homes in Manchester Pike was the other big thing. So I don't think I need to run through it in any more detail than that, unless there are any specific questions or concerns or anything you'd like to discuss.
So and I may have misunderstood you, are you asking to increase the square footage of the data center, or are you okay with the way it is outlined in the pattern book?
So the use table at the city has 2 data centers, one less than 15,000 and one more. We wanted to include both just because, this is a speculative development, and we like to try to keep as many options open because we don't know who our users are going to be. And we do see a decent amount of small data centers, but are still in excess of 15,000 square feet, but are still small, maybe 20, 30,000 square feet. And they often use closed loop water chilling systems, so they just, once those pipes are filled, they never need to fill it again. And from there on, it's just their employees, which are relatively low. So they're pretty low water users. You know, they use a lot of power, but they're small in scale relative to most data centers, so it's usually not too bad. And again, this would only be a possibility if that utility capacity was there and available. So our request is just trying to keep arbitrary limits off of who can go into these buildings.
Okay, so I'm still confused. Is the plan book saying that it's less than 15,000 square feet, but he's asking for more?
Yes.
So they're listed twice. So
listed
there's
both
one
times.
that's listed under commercial, which is less than 15
Yeah.
because it's tied to a commercial use. The other one that's highlighted in yellow is the one that staff doesn't agree with because it would be potentially a standalone center of any size.
I see.
Yeah, we included both.
And as Holly described, in our zoning ordinance, we do allow data centers of greater than 50,000 square feet, but it requires the fact-specific hearing by the BZA to grant the special use permit because it's a planned development here. Normally, if our special use permit regulations in the zoning ordinance have particularized conditions that they have to meet, we can import those into a pattern book like this. Here, in this instance, our data center special use permit doesn't have any particularized requirements to it. And so this was kind of a unique requirement that the developer came up with because most cities, what they've seen is the main issues with data centers are, depending on the cooling designs, they can have eye-watering amounts of water usage. And so they proposed this as a sort of middle ground that would put a limitation on the type of data center that could go there, but would allow a data center of greater than 15,000 square feet.
And I would also just add, just because those are the only two categories of data centers in our zoning ordinance, this is a planned development. So the Planning Commission, you know, he mentioned data centers of, 20, 25, 30,000. So you could come up with your own category with your own limitation of square footage that's somewhere in between 15 and 50,000 square feet. So it's kind of a blank slate as part of a planned development. You're not bound by just those categories that are currently in our zoning ordinance.
So what does staff suggest?
I think Holly's recommendation in her staff report was just the smaller data center. But obviously, this, we would yield to the pleasure of the board.
Okay. Any other comments before we deliberate?
No, just that, my understanding has been that most of the heartburn about the larger data center was in regards to utility capacity, which I think, we've tried to address and probably have practically addressed it. So I think, if there isn't power and there isn't sewer available for whoever the prospective data center user is, they just simply can't go in the building. We need will serve letters from both of those utility services prior.
Has that been discussed at this point in time with the utilities?
No, because I don't think it's very probable that a data center user would go in, but it's like I said, when these are speculative, we don't have any users yet. That's a rather risky form of development to spend all this money to build these and just hope and pray that people show up and want to occupy them. So it's good to leave as many options open so people can get engaged and see if it's a good fit for them. And historically, data center users have been pretty great tenants to have.
They're quiet.
They're quiet. They have no trucks whatsoever. They don't have a ton of jobs per square foot, but those jobs are very high paying. They're technical engineers and coders and stuff. So it's generally well regarded, and they pay a lot in utility revenue into the cities. So we've had a lot of success putting them in places around the country. There's a little bit of a stink on the term data center because of the big ones that show up and disrupt things, but our biggest building's 230,000 square feet. I mean, I'm happy to put a ceiling on the data center in the description at like 100,000 square feet or something like that, if that helps address a concern about one of those larger concepts.
I don't have a problem with the data center. I think I know we're speculating, I think it's unlikely a data center would pay what I assume will be expensive rent. Typically, they can build a building cheaper out in the country somewhere. from my experience having worked with a data center. So I'm not super worried about that use, and they are quiet. If one does go in there, they're typically pretty good neighbors. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Any other discussion associated with this? I think that we need to, whatever the motion is, needs to address the data center in and of itself, because we've got a recommendation from staff, but then we've got a kind of a, not opposing, but an ask that's not in conjunction with staff's comments. Y'all follow me?
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience with data centers, but what's the reason for the opposition of the greater than 15,000 square feet?
Ms. Smith? I was trying to hear over the,
I was just saying, what was the reasoning for the opposition of the over 15,000?
so when we looked at it about 3 or 4 years ago, we added it to our policy because we were getting a lot of asks around the country. So some of the professional development organizations that we're part of, they've seen all the different gamuts. Of course, technology changes day to day, so it does impact some of those things. But about 2.5 years ago, when we first started looking at this particular site, it was brought up. MTE said, we don't have the power. So, you know, Jamie's point is well taken. If you don't have the power, you're not going to build because you don't have the power. But nothing says in the future you don't have natural gas or some other means, or maybe they generate their own power on site. But currently, there's not an allowance for them to generate their own power on site. But that's what some of the data centers are starting to look at, and some of those other noxious types usage can be involved. A special use permit, we can always condition it to avoid and mitigate any of those particular events to, you know, as best as we can. Here, there's not any criteria. I think they were asking if they developed some criteria, and we folded it into here because we don't have any now. Would that be possible? And currently, the only thing that we have in, I think it was a very small, I don't even know if it's still there in the footnotes. I think we had something.
It's footnote 8, I believe.
Number 8, must utilize closed-loop cooling systems and other technologies that do not require the use of public water and wastewater. So that was the one that was thrown into us from the developer as, hey, we can at least, you know, throw this in here, and that way you have a placeholder for it. But we haven't seen a data center and studied it intently, but at least the smaller scale ones, they're being incorporated into a lot of banks and regular commercial users. So similar to an industrial area, we don't have storage of 70% of most of the buildings. If it's an accessory use, it's a accessory use. So that's the main reason that years ago when we started the policy, we felt comfortable and safe, not a problem with 15,000 or less when it's coordinated with something else. I don't think that the applicant in this case would want to coordinate it with something else where they would have a large-scale user, but if you wanted to bump up the numbers, just like you looked at school sites, right? And you said, hey, 50,000 square feet. If you're less than that, you can just go through site plan review. Any of the projects, the buildings will have to come to Planning Commission for review and approval. But the tenants that go into those buildings, you don't necessarily see. We just look at the use table, what the standards are. Yep, they meet the standards. They go on their merry way. And you never see those tenants come back to you.
I think last time we looked at this project, we had issues with the visibility from 41. I think they done a good job addressing the visibility from 41, turning the building around, adding the landscape buffer, so I'm good with it.
I do think they did a good job of working with us on that a little bit. So I do appreciate that aspect of it. I don't know what the right answer is on the data center necessarily. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
I'm not sure why we would oppose it if
Really?
if he limited adding the second one, if the current's there, I mean, the lack of current by MTE could eliminate it, and it may be discussing a lot for no good reason here. I don't know. What was that, Tristan? I
I feel
apologize.
like the utilities would limit,
Yeah, they'll do
Yeah.
it for us.
do
yeah.
anyways, and we don't have to necessarily limit.
But if the utilities were there, I think it would be a nice addition to have.
I'm good with the data center.
That's kind of where I was leaning, but
I'm good with it.
All right.
I mean,
Do we have a motion?
Do we want to limit?
I think he's already addressed it at 100,000 square feet.
I think he just threw that out there. I don't
What's
know
a
if that was.
comfortable limit that you would?
Yeah, if we want to throw a ceiling on it, I said 100, so I'll stick with that. I want to retrade you now and go to 150, but
You don't want to go more.
Big now.
You don't want to go up. You want to go down.
All right. I think we have a consensus. Do we have a motion?
Just to be clear, the motion would need to include, if there was to be a limitation on the data center, you would want to include that in the motion.
Are there any other concerns or thoughts about the project, Councilman Wright? You expressed a lot at the last meeting, I believe, so.
I think they've come a long way for the visibility. I would still like the buildings that face 41 to look more of a Class A type building instead of a warehouse building, but if everybody else is good, from my communication with the neighbors across the street, they were concerned with 55-foot tall warehouse-looking buildings. I understand that there's some commercial back spots on the street for future use, but as of right now, they're not developable. So my main concern is still the spread of warehouses and industrial usage all the way down the corridor, where this is the first one out of the gate. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. So I think they've come a long way, and I appreciate all the work they've done, but they haven't got me there. But I'm just one person out of the 6 here tonight, so y'all are good to go.
Is there anything you would like to see different?
Well,
More just the back.
yeah, I think we just need to,
Facade?
the back facade facing 41, instead of 55 foot, maybe 35 foot tall, make them look like Class A office space, not like a warehouse. I mean, if you live across the street, I mean, I think we had asked about a visual.
Yeah, did you guys work on that visual?
Yeah, we saw it.
We saw.
Did we? I'm sorry.
yeah,
so-
the screening grows quite large.
Yeah.
So the
Oh, that one picture, okay, one
Yeah.
picture, okay.
Yeah.
the
Ditch right
one
there.
looking.
I mean, think about that. If that building was 20 foot smaller, it's totally hidden by the trees.
Maybe we just need bigger tree. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's the next one down. Is the one
Yeah.
looking at That's the one.
Oh, that's from 41?
That's
that's
the
from
closest
All of
building.
these are from 41. It's just going from north to south as you go down the
And the
page.
progression of the years of the trees.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Long
Yeah.
time to wait for some trees. What if they die? I just planted these trees, they died like 6 months
You
later.
got to put water on it.
There will be,
If the trees are part of a buffering requirement, they have to maintain that. So if they die, they would have to
Yeah.
replant.
Yeah.
Thank God.
So I
they
think
don't plant 'em.
I think they've come a long way, and I
They have.
appreciate all the work that they've done.
Yeah.
I'm just one of 6.
Well,
So.
the last time,
Right, yeah, it still,
Yeah, but-
it still looks like an industrial.
but the last time they had this building turned around where you was looking at trucks.
Right.
I think they done a good job turning the building around, putting the landscaping. I'm good with it.
And I would just note that it's relatively short term. If you look at the 10-year, I mean, you won't be able to see hardly anything.
Do you have a berm right there? Is that what y'all are proposing, like a berm with the
No, but it's
landscaping
a
on top?
topographical
Right.
change in elevation
Okay.
because of the grading of the site.
not to limit conversation, but do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it, sub to staff comments and the 100,000 square foot limit on the data center.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Vice Chair Avewater,
I wasn't ready.
First.
Aye. I'll see it at council. Aye.
Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
All right.
Mr. Collins,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
No.
Chair Halliburton.
Aye. Yeah, application passes, at least the planning commission. So the next item on our agenda is public hearings and recommendations to council. I will preface the public hearing portion of the meeting in the fact that if you haven't been to a planning commission meeting in the past, we would ask that you would limit your comments to 3 minutes, because we have, looks like several people who would like to speak tonight. If you will address all your comments and questions to the Planning Commission and not to anyone in particular in the crowd, we would appreciate that. Your questions will be noted, and all questions will be responded to at the end of the public hearing. And just so I want to make sure everybody understands, a lot of time they'll come up and ask a question and assume that that question is going to be answered right then. We note the question and we'll answer the question at the end of the public hearing. With that, the first public hearing is an annexation petition and plan for services for approximately 8.81 acres located along Sulphur Springs Road and North Thompson Lane, including approximately 920 linear feet of Sulphur Springs Road right-of-way. K&B Investment Partners, LLC is the applicant. Mr. Barbie.
Good afternoon, Chair Halliburton and members of the Murfreesboro Planning Commission. This annexation petition before you tonight is a request to annex almost 9 acres of property located at the southwest corner of Sulphur Springs Road and North Thompson Lane. The property is currently zoned RM, residential medium density, outside the city limits in the unincorporated county. Surrounding properties, as you can see in the map here, are all zoned residential single family, as well as most of the county property that you see that is not shaded in yellow. The applicant wishes to develop this property, or this petition does not have an adjoining rezoning request, so it would have an interim zoning designation of RS15, residential family, 15,000 square foot lot minimum. The developer has communicated his intent to develop this into large estate type lots, which is consistent with our future land use study. 8.81 acres, I believe they'd be able to get a maximum of maybe 8 lots. 8 lots yield out of this. I believe Mr. Matt Taylor is with us tonight, who is representing the applicant.
Mr. Barbie, would you mind putting it on the larger ortho map?
Want this one?
Yes. I don't think Mr. Taylor has a formal presentation. I think he's here if you have questions.
Can we get a spotlight on Mr. Taylor?
Not a whole lot more to say.
No. Did also want to mention the right-of-way that's of Sulphur Springs Road that's right in front of the subject property. Went before the road board a couple of months ago, and they granted their consent for us to annex that right-of-way.
I live right here. I mean, I could get there very, very quickly. So does Mr. Rollins. I'm concerned about not necessarily the annexation, but looking down the road, multiple driveway drops on Sulphur Springs. I'm fine with the annexation. I'm talking about long-term down the road. Curb cuts and traffic. How that's going to look on that stretch of Sulphur Springs.
Mr. Wright, we have had only very preliminary discussions with Mr. Taylor and his team about the development of the property, but I can assure you that we will be looking at that if it is annexed and they submit a preliminary plat, and then y'all will also be looking at it because it will come to the Planning Commission, and we can put it on the regular agenda for discussion and vote rather than consent agenda, no matter what condition we feel that it's in.
I just wanted to make sure that was on the record for the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we are definitely aware of that.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's a good point.
If there are no other questions or, no?
Public hearing.
Public hearing. We'll have the public hearing now.
All right, anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward. All right. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and Jamie, go for it.
I have a motion to approve the annexation and plan of services. Were there staff comments? Subject to all staff comments if there are any.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Vice Chair Ava Water.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Chair Halliburton.
Aye. The next item on our agenda is a zoning application for approximately 13.4 acres located along Memorial Boulevard and Tillanook Lane to be rezoned from RS-15, CH Commercial Highway and CF Commercial Fringe to PCD, Planned Commercial Development, Kroger. Goodwin Mills Kaywood is the applicant. Mr. Barbie.
Good afternoon again, Chair and Planning Commission members. This next application for your consideration tonight and for public hearing is a potential Kroger site located at the southwest corner of Tillanook Lane and Memorial Boulevard. Consists of 3 properties that will be consolidated in order to potentially develop this location. Current site is zoned commercial fringe, commercial highway, and RS-15. The adjacent properties to the east are also commercial zoning, as well as to the northeast. To the north, there is an institutionally zoned property as well. That's across Tillanook Lane in this area. Scroll down. We've worked very closely with Kroger and their representative, Mr. Randy Perry, on this plan book and design for the site. They have held a neighborhood meeting back on February, get to my page, I believe it was February 10th at 5:30 at the SportsCom. It was very well attended by residents and neighbors of the area. They provided a lot of good feedback about the concerns about the development and some of the concerns of the general area as well. Just a kind of a sampling of that is existing and future drainage for both regionally and drainage associated with the Kroger development of itself. Concerns about increased traffic, concerns about potential impacts on property values and potential noise impacts from both deliveries being made to the store and solid waste pickups that will be at the side of the building as well. I had some good discussion about this back on the 11th when this meeting was set. We will need to conduct a public hearing on this item tonight, and at the conclusion, you'll need to make a recommendation for the City Council. I'm available if you have any questions at this time or after the public hearing.
Is the applicant going to
The
present?
applicant is here as well, Mr. Randy Perry with GMC.
And he has a presentation. that-
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Randy Perry with Goodwin Mills Kaywood in Nashville. I'm bringing before you tonight a rezoning request. Brad walked through it effectively. It is 3 properties. 2 are zoned RS-15. The third is zoned CH and CF. The rezoning request is for PCD, a commercial PUD that would combine all 3 for the development of a new Kroger and fuel center. The Kroger store itself is 99,000 square feet. It's a new prototype. New amenities inside and the latest conveniences. The fuel center is an upgraded with brick columns. The canopy has a mansard roof on it and a kiosk. There are no other shop spaces or other retail on this site. There are some different uses inside the Kroger store as typical of a Kroger, but there is no shop space, just the Kroger and the fuel center. We did have a neighborhood meeting. There were several concerns expressed. We walked through the plans, explained what we felt, items that were in place to mitigate some of those concerns, and we've made a couple of changes since then based on that feedback. And I want to touch on a few of those things. At the last Planning Commission meeting, there was a question about solid waste and the schedule for that. The solid waste and how that works, at the back of the store, there is a truck well, so that the delivery trucks and a compactor are in the truck well, which is sunk below finished floor grade of the store. On the outside of that truck well is a raised
Yeah, and Mr. Perry, I've got your PDF pulled up on one of the tabs up top, if you want to.
Sure.
Yeah. Probably show the plan as you're walking through it.
This is the store itself, and as I'll explain on the back side, if you can see, this is a brick screen and noise wall. So behind that, sunk down, you can see this line. This is the truck well. The compactor sits down in here. The compactor schedule is it gets turned over once every 2 weeks. It does occur midday. There was a concern about when that would occur and how often. Another concern was deliveries. Deliveries mostly occur midday to the afternoon. There is, with Kroger and the distribution centers and the carriers, they can schedule that and restrict that delivery time to no later than 7, 8, or 9 p.m. Most occur during the day, but this would then guarantee that none would occur late at night. That was another concern that was expressed at the meeting, and we want to provide that feedback to you, and also some of the questions here at the Planning Commission meeting. So Brad was right. He had showed you the existing zoning, and I have a good split screen here for you. On the left is existing zoning. All the properties south of us down to Haynes are zoned CH, CF. The future land use plan shows all 3 of these parcels to be commercial at some point in the future. We believe that this is a really good development for the city to achieve that. Make no mistake, we want to develop the corner, but we believe this is also a good fit for the city, especially as the growth that Murfreesboro is experiencing. I personally believe that most of this corridor is going to be developed commercially sooner rather than later. The pattern book that is a part of the proposal has several sheets similar to what I just showed you. Explains what sewers out there, utilities, but I also want to touch on a concern that came out about traffic. We've had a traffic study done. We met with TDOT. We met with the city traffic engineer. TDOT and the city have both reviewed that traffic study, and they've approved it conceptually. We then have to submit a permit set, which would then be reviewed. But out of that traffic study and the discussion with the city and TDOT, the improvements that would be made, one is a right turn lane. Tillinook is under construction now, but there's no right turn lane as you're exiting. Our plan would add that right turn lane as you're approaching the signal, and you could turn south on a new turn lane. On Memorial, there is a decel right turn lane so that anyone traveling south would then enter into a decel lane out of the main line of traffic and turn right into the southern entrance. There are 2 access points on Tillinook. There are 2 future stubs on the south side of the site plan for future development to the south where you could get internal cross connectivity. So we touched on traffic and noise a little bit. Drainage was another concern, and Northridge is a subdivision that's being built right now. They have a pipe network and a detention pond, and they've stubbed 2 42-inch pipes that are, my understanding is, intended to pick up this drainage that travels to the north. Drainage was a concern. Kroger, what we've committed to is we're required to provide detention. So if you guys know, it's the amount of rainfall that's happening now. Once you pave it, it speeds up. Detention throttles that back and in effect meters that release through an outlet structure. Kroger has committed to over-detain as much as we can to provide some level of conservative storage that may benefit the entire area from Haynes up to this point. We know that the city has a design plan in place. I don't know that it's funded. I don't think it is. That has another larger detention pond just south of this and a couple of pipes that release near the southwest corner of Kroger's property or Kroger's potential property. Our design allows for that drainage to continue on through. So there is a conscious effort to address as much as we can the drainage issues that are occurring and to help improve those. Another concern was screening and what are we going to be looking at. And I believe the chairman had asked for a sightline study. at the last meeting. We put together one that's fairly simple, but also expresses what you're going to see. At the back of the store, there's a common property line. And two things came out of the meeting. What are we going to see? And when I say meeting, I mean the meeting with the neighbors. What are we going to see, and what are you going to do to the trees along the common property line? So prior to the meeting, we have already included into our plan a type E buffer. And a type E buffer is more than what's required from between PCD and residential zone per the code. D is required. We have shown an E buffer. E usually screens against industrial zone, against residential. An E buffer is more heavily planted, has a 4-foot berm, and that's what we show on the backside. What we've done since the neighborhood meeting is sent a surveyor out. We've located every tree along this common property line. We, in our design plans, which are not a part of the pattern book, but on our design plans, we have delineated the drip lines of the trees, and the toe of our slope, there will be some fill on our site, starts outside of the drip line. So there's no disturbance in the drip lines that run along this common property line. That was a concern of the meeting, and we can accommodate that. The sightline study, it's a little hard to see at this scale, but there's a 6-foot person standing on the other side of the property line. This first set of trees are the existing trees. The second set of trees are the buffer trees, and Brad asked for a rendering. We didn't send one in with this, but we have done one since then, and it's just it's a solid, it's green because of the density of the buffer and the elevation that they'll be planted. On day one, code requires, I read, a 6-foot minimum height. We normally plant 8 to 10-foot trees, and our rendering, 3D rendering, has trees shown at 8 and 12. There's a building in the rendering, you can't see it. So I could show it to you.
Mr. Perry, it's, if you look on the taskbar in the blue square on the right, the blue taskbar on the bottom.
This one?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, that's great. So these are 8-foot tall trees, and there's a building in this picture. It just can't see. This takes into account the fill and the berm and the trees at planting. And this was taken, these trees obviously are deciduous on the property line. That was we felt that it was important to address that and answer your question for the sightline study.
Thank you.
And I'll try to speed this up. One benefit of a rezone are the uses that essentially get excluded with a rezone. And in our pattern book, we have 2 sheets of uses that would be excluded with the rezone. We have another tabulation that would show the allowed uses, and the allowed uses are bakery, things that are inherent with a grocery store. There's not anything snuck in here that would not be, it would be considered what I would say as an undesirable use. So the last addendum 2 has all the uses that would be excluded. Let's see, the existing store, that was another question Matt had asked about. We, our development partner, Southeast Development, is with us. I talked to him today, and he has 2 national tenants that are already looking at that space. It's in a very good location. One question was, why do you need a new Kroger store? And our current Kroger store is over capacity, and there's no room to expand at that location. That's the reason we want to develop this new Kroger store. So that's a summary of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions for the applicant at this point?
I missed that. I'm so sorry. You're saying you're going to rent out the other building?
Yes.
And the Kroger's moving?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was like,
I appreciate all the detail you put in and the work you've done since our last meeting. The explanation with the dumpsters and the deliveries was very needed, and the way the water moves. Thank you.
Any other questions before we open the public hearing? All right. Hearing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak for or against this application, please come forward. If you will, state your name and your address for the record. Go ahead.
Yes, and I'm just going to read this, and some of it he's addressed, but I'm not going to try to rewrite it on the fly. All right. My name is Mike Bacon. I live at 2814 Archer Avenue. I'm speaking for myself as well as Ms. Kathleen Deneen. She's at 2810 Archer, and Ms. Mary Kowalski is at 2806 Archer, who couldn't be with us tonight. The currently site plan places Kroger Building directly behind our property, approximately 120 feet from our backyard. Is the rear drive and 150 feet from the loading docks. The development also proposes raising the site elevation approximately 6 feet higher than our land is currently, and we're currently the low point to the northeast side of Palmer Heights. Recent development of North Ridge Park subdivision raised nearby land elevations 5 foot. As a part of that project, it was referenced, they put in the big 2 48-inch drainage ditches right beside my house to help with the water. However, the drainage system has not been tested by any rainfall events yet that we've experienced in the past. The land behind our property, the Kroger site, also contains a large pond that historically has served as a natural collection area for heavy rainfalls and extreme events. We've had that pond to back up and to reach all the way into our backyard. In addition to runoff created by this new development, there's also discussions about the routing water from potential future developments south of this site, the Haynes Drive Memorial area, and drainage toward the Archer Avenue properties. I know there's a lot of questions there. It seems like everything's funneling to my house, right? That's what it feels like. We understand retention ponds are a normal part of developments like this. However, when considering the combined effects of elevation changes, the current Kroger proposal and the possibility of additional water being routed a direction in the future, it leaves our homes in vulnerable positions. We also understand that the action being considered tonight is a rezoning of the property. As residents and laymen of the process, it's unclear as to when our voices are best heard because decisions made at this stage influence overall layouts of the project. Because of these conditions, the position of the building seems very important, and I know we've talked about loading docks here, but we feel like that if the building was moved 150 feet further away from the Palmer Heights neighborhood than currently proposed, this distance between the building and the homes along Archer Avenue would increase to 300 feet. That additional distance would reduce the impact of loading dock activity, semi-truck traffic, trash pickup, and other services providers that would otherwise occur directly behind the residential homes. Another concern often discussed is delivery activity. While deliveries may occur only during certain hours, operational policies can change as stores grow and management changes, and we would have no recourse if that type of stuff happened. Moving the building would also create the opportunity to place the stormwater retention areas between the commercial development and Palmer Heights rather than to the side of it. So it does two benefits. It helps with the water, but it also pushes the building further away from a residential development. We understand Murfreesboro continue to grow. We just request that as the project moves forward, reasonable adjustments be considered to balance that growth with the potential, with the protection of the surrounding neighborhood. So that's really all I have. Just wanted to try to see if it could be pushed out and have moved those retention ponds, maybe lose a parking space or two, but it would protect our area.
Thank you, sir.
Hi. Carla Thomas, and I live right alongside Archer on Morgan Road. I'm at 2618. I was present at that meeting on the 10th, and we did bring up all those things that gentleman previously mentioned. Mostly, we have issues with the flooding, our concerns about traffic. Murfreesboro is growing way too fast, and I don't feel that the infrastructure supports what y'all allow. Y'all allowed that developer to come in and build those homes. Well, they built it at a higher elevation, so now our neighborhood is flooding. You've got future plans for a detention pond in my backyard. So that's going to create a mushy marsh, and it's going to affect my ability to enjoy our property. We didn't sign up for that when we purchased our home. Y'all are making these plans, and y'all aren't looking at the big picture about how it's affecting your constituents. It is affecting our property value and our enjoyment of our homes. And Kroger's wanting to build a bigger facility, and I think they already have a big enough facility. We have Publix right there. We've got Super Walmart. We've got all these right there. We don't need a larger Kroger's in our neighborhood. Our residential area needs to stay residential. We don't need commercial mixed in the middle of our residential area. We want a peaceful area for our homes and our children. Y'all, they talk about deliveries at certain times of the day. Well, you have to deal with the traffic. You have to deal with the schools. We've got 3 schools right there. We've got Siegel Elementary, the high school, the middle school, and then you're going to throw their deliveries in there with the traffic and the kids trying to get home from school. Traffic is ridiculous right now. It takes you almost an hour just to get down Memorial. And I just feel like this should not be converted to commercial. We have enough traffic. I don't know what y'all are going to do with this situation. And as far as this detention pond, did y'all stop and think how that's going to affect our homes? I'm sorry, you did say you were going to answer at the end.
Yes, ma'am.
But there's going to be mosquitoes. We won't be able to enjoy our backyard. And I'm assuming, I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but I'm assuming that the ground is going to stay wet. It's going to affect our ability to grow our gardens, our produce in our own yard, because the ground is going to be affected because it's that retention pond back there. And then what about the mosquitoes? So if
We
you
can
could
definitely
answer
address
that.
those questions.
Yes,
No.
but I would strongly recommend that y'all do not approve this. Leave it residential. We don't need all that traffic in our neighborhood. The roads aren't wide enough. We need to be able to get in and out of our homes. Our children need to get to the school, and we don't need extended periods of time to try and live our life. We just want to be able to enjoy our property, and this would severely impact that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this application?
Anyone else? Chairman Halliburton and members of the Planning Commission, thank you for your service to our community. I'm here on behalf of myself and my wife, Jean Ann Rogers. We reside at 2631 Memorial Boulevard on approximately 5 acres, which we purchased in 1995. And within a year of purchasing that tract, we purchased the adjoining tract to us that, as I understand from the tax assessor's office, doesn't have a street number yet, but will when it's built or developed in some way. So we're right there on Memorial, and we are beside the Talbert property, which is on the south. We're the south side of that. We're not opposed. We knew when we moved in that you're on Memorial Boulevard that this could happen, and so we fully expected it would, and we support the plan of Kroger to improve the property and do what they will. But having said that, and let me make a comment, I think her property was part of the Hy-Vee case that was going on, and that's the pond that I believe she's referring to, not the one that's been talked about this evening. It's a different matter that's been handled. 2 things. Number one, we do not oppose, there's a 22-foot, which I think is the residential, for a cut-in or a commercial curb access, and we've indicated we're not opposed. We would like that to be 35-foot. I think TDOT has a higher footage for that, and since if it's a commercial development, it would make sense and seem that the 35 would be appropriate instead of a 24 curb. There's two of them. I'm not smart enough to figure out all these charts, but if one of those gentlemen pulled up the chart, if you had a question about it, they can show you because they indicated that's where they would be. What is a problem is the natural storm water. The natural storm water flows from our property is across the proposed Kroger site. So where we live, we don't really have a flooding problem that I'm aware of, but when it rains and the heavy rains, it flows north. The water does, and it goes across the proposed Kroger site. Where is that water going? And I understand from information that's been provided, the western third or rear of the Kroger site will be raised 6 feet. The middle third will be raised 4 feet, and the eastern third or front will be cut in an effort to balance the site. I submit the current plan does not appear to provide for the natural flow of storm water from our property and traps the water. And respectfully, the plan should be modified to accommodate the natural flow of storm water from our property. We're not opposed, but we would like for that to be assured that that's going to be taken care of. We don't think the intent is to flood and make us have a lake on our property, but that's the concern we have if they're not accounting for it and how it's going to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Anyone else would like to speak for or against this application? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. There are several questions that have been brought up. I know the applicant tried to address some, but we may need somebody from staff. Specifically, I've got 2 or 3 things. Can someone with staff or the engineer, let's talk a little more about this water runoff piece, specifically going towards Palmer Heights, going towards Mr. Rogers' property, and so that everybody understands what's going on here, and then the process from the city's perspective of how this is going to work from a engineering perspective.
Yeah. And Chair Halliburton, appreciate those questions. I do think that Mr. Perry should address them first, and then I anticipated these questions coming up, and so Ms. Knoll is here to speak to that from a city standpoint as well.
Thank you.
And I'm so sorry, Mr. Perry, may I get your address again? Yes, ma'am. It's 18 Morgan Road. Thank you, I missed it, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
You
Perry.
ready? A couple of the easier ones, I think. Mr. Rogers has mentioned 2 access points on the south side of this property that they're 30 feet now. They can be 35 feet. They're covered by 36-foot easements. The width of those 2 driveways is easily adjustable. That's not a problem. I guess really the drainage would be the next thing. We talked about deliveries and noise and the scheduling of those things. I will say sometimes the question comes up of a change in management. What happens if Kroger goes belly up? Kroger doesn't go into these things lightly. There is quite a bit of research and market study that's been done. Kroger is over capacity at their current store. They want to develop a bigger new store in the same general area. The old store would be filled with a new national tenant. I don't know who those are, but I was just told 2 national tenants. The shifting the building doesn't work operationally with Kroger, rotating it or moving it off the back property line. There has to be a certain number of spaces for Kroger based on 100 years, many years of research on how many parking spaces do we need. And depending on the city, we'll argue up or down, depending on the current code, to get into that area where Kroger believes they need for operating. That we don't want to pave a lot of parking spaces that don't get used, but we also want to have enough parking spaces for customers. Part of this development is also the pickup spaces in the back. If you're familiar with those, you order groceries online. usually, and then you'll drive to the store and someone brings them out and loads your car. So there is that area that helps reduce some of the number of parking spaces that we need because of that turnover for the pickup amenity. This site that we have is tight. We normally like 15, 16 acres. This is 13.4. And there's not a lot of room to reconfigure this thing. We did move it away from the property line further than most other Kroger stores are from rear property lines in consideration of the neighbor. And we have squeezed it down to about the bare minimum of parking spaces. We've left room for detention on the side. There's also going to be permeable pavers in the parking lot itself. And that also has to be designed without the pavers ending up in the drive aisles, because you don't want to push a couple $100 worth of groceries rattling across the pavers. So all of this goes into the development of a Kroger. Drainage from the south. The schematic plans that we have that are not a part of this are about 60-70% complete, because we needed to get them to a point where we felt comfortable presenting this pattern book to you, the city. Drainage is a concern. This is a GIS topography that's off of the city's online mapping system, and you can see the way these work. These little squiggly lines are contours, and this is showing a slope that goes to the northwest, from the southeast to the northwest. There is drainage that comes along this common property line. There is drainage that comes from the property to the south. Our schematic plans have inlets, head walls, and pipe along our southern property line on our site plan that pick up drainage from the south and convey it to the outfall that is currently going. Right now it's in a sheet flow pattern, but once something gets in the way, it concentrates, and that's what the pipe network is for. The detention pond that we're talking about, there are 2 or 3 in this discussion tonight. One is Northridge's, which is on their northwest corner. Then there's the Kroger detention pond, which would be on the north side of the building, plus the permeable pavers. And under the permeable pavers is something called underground detention. It's an opened channel. It's an upside down channel. It's a half of a pipe in an arch form. It has holes, and there's stone in between the pipes. And in that stone, there's void space, and there's a volume there. So when I had mentioned earlier about over-detaining in the Kroger parking lot, we can store more water than we are required to by city code. That doesn't increase the cost for Kroger that much, because we take advantage of, it's a trade-off for fill material versus the underground detention. There's a balance there. So by doing over detention, we have the ability to hold back more water from the Kroger property only that may be getting into this area and creating these flood concerns. That's the part that Kroger can commit to. Northridge has a pipe network and a detention pond. That's the part that they've committed to and designed. The Hy-Vee development that Kroger was a part of a while back for the South Memorial that didn't happen, there was a detention pond that was going to be built as a part of that development to help address these drainage concerns. So as these developments occur, it may not feel like it, but there are drainage improvements that are part of that. Right now, I'm hearing we have a drainage problem. Well, if nothing happens, if there's no improvement made, you'll still have this drainage problem. With development, it takes a while for grass to get stabilized, pavement to get brought up to the inlet, where the water goes into the inlet instead of around the inlet, so when you just hit binder instead of the actual top course of the pavement. All those things occur over time. The third detention pond is further south. That was part of the Hy-Vee Kroger piece. That's kind of at the midpoint between where we are and Haynes. And that is a city design project that, again, is an improvement to address the existing drainage concern. So all of these developments, and as people develop further south of us, they're going to have to do the same thing. They're going to have to provide detention and allow for off-site drainage to continue on through their site. That's what we're doing with Kroger as a piece of the overall development between us and Haynes. That's my summary on it.
Ms. Knoll?
And while Ms. Knoll was coming up, I just want to take a moment to brag on her real quick. She was recently appointed as the city's floodplain administrator. Mr. Richard Donovan had been holding that title, and Mr. Gore appointed her as the city's floodplain administrator several weeks ago. We appreciate her stepping up to that role. She brings a lot of years of knowledge to that role. So I just wanted to mention that for the Planning Commission.
Or condolences.
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe the latter, but we'll see.
Congratulations.
So good evening, Chair and members of Planning Commission. I've pulled up GIS here on this screen. The detention pond that is mentioned behind Ms. Thomas's home, she lives here. There is a city detention pond that we had plans designed for. I think the plans are actually dated 2014. It's not been constructed as of yet. When Hy-Vee was in play, they were going to be taking on that detention part, expanding their detention pond. I believe that plan was actually approved in 23, so it's pretty much lapsed. They do own the property, but I do not believe it's moving forward. So I think that's something the city might take up. It's currently not funded, so some of you on that one. There is a pipe from that detention pond that goes along this rear property line. I'm sorry, I don't like drawing on the screen that way. Comes about to here, somewhere in there. I don't like my colors.
I know, I said you picked green.
It was what was there. So it's in that range. What their plan is to take that through their project and discharge it at this corner. Mr. Bacon, I'm aware of your problems. I've been to your property. When we review the engineered design, we will definitely be paying a large amount of attention to this corner to see how that's going to look. We do not want more problems for any of the residents here. I have talked with many of the residents throughout the Northridge Park development. I'm well aware of all of those concerns. Until we get a full design, there's not a whole lot more than we can say is they're planning for it. The pipes that are installed here, they are two 24-inch equivalents. The pipe at the corner here are 242. So there is more capacity in these pipes than even in what the city's project is.
So the goal is to get the water to the 242 inches,
The
right?
242, yeah.
Okay.
And hopes, and bypass Mr. Bacon's property.
So you like to be underground or something there? Or is it, I was told it's going to be on the surface, hopefully finding its way to that 42-inch pipe.
We will make sure it gets to those, my goal is with my review is to make sure it gets to those 42.
I don't even know if there's room for a ditch. I think it might have to be piped on the backside of that property. I mean, with you putting the berm and everything there, if the goal is to pipe it, I mean, right? So, I mean, we're taking on the water from the south side, piping it around the west to Northridge.
And then also to address this concern here, I've seen the drainage concept plan that they've drawn up. There is a small swale and the head wall, so I don't feel like that will be as much of a concern for these properties, but we are going to keep an eye and make sure that gets to those.
Is there an existing pond on the property now? It's shown on the 24 contours.
There
but-
is, I think,
Okay.
let me turn on clear.
I assume it's natural, not man-made?
It looks man-made.
I think it was man-made.
It's pretty much, yeah, the contours look pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Pond was man-made.
There's a small pond
Oh.
Yeah.
right there.
But no, that's not,
About
that's not the
350.
pond.
Oh, we're talking about that
This
one.
here?
That-
Yeah.
there-
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, that's pond.
Well, that one's a small
Yeah,
pond
it
too.
is. It's a little small pond.
Katie said, to be fair, they're both ponds.
All right.
get there.
Katie, any other comments that you have?
If you have any other questions for me.
His contour.
Any other questions for Ms. Knoll? All right.
Out of curiosity, actually, Katie, out of curiosity, that development that we approved a couple years ago where Archer's going to extend to right there,
Not going to extend.
right, or not going to, that's right, that was the point of contention. Sorry, my apologies.
Extend their road while they're right here talking about Kroger.
Rewind.
Pick up a bunch of 69
Yeah,
dirt.
those houses, okay. Did we consider this when we were discussing that as well? Do you remember?
I do not remember.
Okay.
I don't remember that being,
What are you
I
talking
think all
Like
the
getting
drainage
the-
we discussed was on the opposite side of the subdivision for that.
Okay.
I'm pretty
On
sure
the
Mr.
backside of
Bacon spoke
Regency.
at that public hearing as well, but
Yeah.
I also know,
This is a picture of the ditch that the dirt ditch that they put beside my house, that water's supposed to capture. You really can't tell it, but that's the 6-foot berm, and my land is at this level. So
these are right here, those are the 42 right here, and then this is Mr. Bacon's property right here.
Miss Nolan, Mr.
I see.
Bromley, I'm trying to go back in history too. When we looked at Adams Place, is all that water coming this way or is this water going that way? And was it
It's-
this property that was helping fix the issue or was it the Haynes property that helped fix the issue?
Everything's flowing north.
North, okay, so it's all coming this way.
This right here was
Yeah, that's north.
addressed that
Okay.
before this was approved.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Knoll? I'm sorry, sir, the public hearing's closed. Any other questions for Ms. Knoll? In reference to the planning commission, the public hearing is closed, so, okay. The 35-foot cut was addressed. The deliveries that are, I know with the BZA, we can, we dictate like hours of operation associated with certain businesses. Since this is a planned development, is there a way to dictate, even though they have are indicating that these deliveries would happen midday as part of the planned development, can that be restricted or denoted as part of the approval, or not?
I think it could. I think the practicality of enforcing that would probably be difficult.
Okay.
I'll look to Mr. Tully. I think to either.
Yes. That is a condition that could be added, but as Mr. Blumley notes, enforcement would be a challenge, certainly. I mean, it would not be impossible, though, if the neighbors,
I'm sure they would call.
I'm sure there would be calls if there were very late-night deliveries, and, you know, there are methods that it could be enforced, but it would be a challenge.
Did we discuss when the typical deliveries are?
Yeah, during the day.
Midday.
At what?
7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I believe, is what the applicant
Well, I
said.
mean,
2
that's-
weeks or
That's
something.
better than at the end of the middle of the night, I guess.
Yeah, that's, but when you talked at the prior meeting, we talked about deliveries and trash pickup in the middle of the night, so he addressed that concern.
All right. Any other questions or comments or motions?
So this is.
A zoning
Just a
app-
zoning application.
Yes.
So if we pass it tonight, it'll go to city council.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm fine with the Kroger. I'm gonna lean on Miss Katie and engineering on the stormwater side of it. It sounds like there is a problem. So
Katie has letters behind her name that I don't, so if
Yeah.
she says she can get it done,
I think that would get hashed out during the approvals, hopefully. So
your motion is to approve?
I haven't made a motion. I was just, it was
Okay.
just a
All right.
comment
Okay.
about, because I know everybody's stressed out about the stormwater.
yeah, I would be too, I understand.
Is that, I have one more question, I'm sorry. The existing detention pond that's there now, what is it serving? I guess, did Northridge build
It's just a
that, or what? The one that's on the pond?
It's a farm pond.
Okay.
We have, as part of our due diligence, we have an environmental team. We've studied it. We've done a wetland delineation report. We submitted it to TDEC. TDEC has agreed and approved and submitted an ARAT permit, which is a permit that allows you to modify an existing body of water. These have been deemed and approved as low quality, essentially geographically detached, low quality bodies of water. And our plan would be to fill it.
Yeah, I understand.
So, Mr. Perry, what I heard you say earlier, it's not an option to move it at all, adjust the building on the current plot at
No,
all?
we've looked at it. We've actually done a couple of plans, and it doesn't work operationally. It just squeezes the parking and it wraps around the building. And the site, if we had a couple more acres, it would open up more breathing room. But it does fit and work with this configuration at 13.4, the way we have it shown. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, pushed as far east as we feel that we can push it. It's, the building's about 125 feet from the building to the property line. So there's,
On the west side?
on the west side, the building, and then there's a 30-foot drive behind it. And then, you know, the rest of that is buffer, green space, and utility extensions. We'll extend sewer from Tillinook down to the south end. Same with water for future extensions to the south.
Thank you.
Can we pull, I'm, yeah. Never mind.
You arguing with yourself?
No, yeah, it literally in my,
All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, I think we need a motion one way or the other.
okay, here's what I will do. I will make a motion to approve at this level, subject to all staff comments. But I am committed to working with, or learning more from Katie about the drainage issues here and making sure that we're doing everything possible before it gets to council, which will be in
Early May, likely.
early May. I've got a lot of learning to do, Katie. We're gonna have to talk a lot. Maybe you can tell me what we learned from the neighbors. So that is my motion to approve, subject to staff comments.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Ms. Jaco?
Vice Chair Ava Water.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
No.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Chair Halliburton.
Aye. That application passes. The next item on our agenda is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance related to minimum rear yard requirements for single-family residential uses and pertaining to Chart 2 minimum lot requirements, minimum yard requirements, and land use intensity ratios, including Chart 2 end note. City of Murfreesboro Planning Department is the applicant. And Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Chair Halliburton. This is a zoning ordinance amendment that I went over at our day meeting. It was something that was brought to our attention several times about some older pre-existing lots that are very shallow, and you know, in the City Core Overlay District, we have reduced front setbacks, but there are several older pre-existing lots that are outside of the City Core Overlay District that, where once you factor in the front setback and the rear setback, I mean, you could have a 20-foot deep building envelope. And so just renders some lots useless, essentially. So what we have done is proposed a zoning ordinance amendment that takes those shallow lots and gives them some relief. Because what we don't want to happen is for folks to make application for variances to the Board of Zoning Appeals, where it might be difficult to prove all the criteria that are required for a variance. And so we're proposing an ordinance amendment that if you are a pre-existing lot as of April 1st of this year, and you're a lot of 80 feet in depth or less, and you're zoned for single-family purposes, that the rear setback would be reduced to 10 feet no matter what the rear setback is for the zoning district. So for example, if it's a RS8 lot, but it's extraordinarily shallow, we'd normally have a 20-foot rear setback in the RS8 zone. This would reduce that to 10 feet to make that lot, the building envelope, more functional, the lot more buildable. And there's one lot in particular that we have a contractor that we've been working with who is relying on this in order for his lot to be buildable. It's because it's really not right now. And so we've worked with him to draft this zoning ordinance amendment as he's encountered several of these lots in a particular area of town. So we'll need to conduct a public hearing on this matter tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
All right. Any questions for Matthew at this point? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing. Anyone would like to speak for or against this application? Hearing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, or motions?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Vice Chair Averwater.
Aye.
Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Rollins.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Chair Halliburton.
Aye. Next item on our agenda is staff reports and other business.
Just a couple of minor things. Scheduling, our next meeting is next week. We only have a week before our next meeting, and we'll have a full agenda for the March 18th, 1 p.m. Planning Commission meeting. And then a reminder that our early April night meeting will be the second Wednesday of the month due to spring break. So it will be April 8th for our 6 p.m. meeting in April, as well as the 4:30 p.m. joint conceptual workshop. And if you haven't signed up, a good way to get a couple of hours of continuing education is the seminar at MTSU next Friday, the 20th. Be some good speakers, and as a matter of fact, I believe Mayor McFarland will be one of the speakers there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. With that, we're adjourned.
Okay.